This is a professional DVCAM tape, and the same machines that take this size tape also take consumer DV tapes and consumer mini DV tapes, usually. So they're very useful pieces of kit. I do use them quite a lot for transferring people's videotapes. So I'm always on the lookout for a good DVCAM machine.
Special delivery.
Oh, I wonder what's in this. Let's have a look. And here we have a DVCAM DSR-30P. This looks so much like the DHR1000 UX DV deck that I've got and actually features in my outro videos. Looks like it, but of course, though that can play DVCAM, and I expect this can also play consumer DV, the big difference being this records in DVCAM. So panels there, and there should be a control panel at the bottom. Let's plug this in and see what, if anything, it does. Also, it comes with some cables. So we've got Firewire cable, S-Video, nice, long, decent quality S-Video cable. Right, okay, IEC power cable, we'll use that. That's another Firewire cable. BNC, that's decent quality too. And... well, we have the user manual for this DSR-30 and also user manual for DSR-11. And I, of course, have DSR-11s. I use those all the time. So let's plug it in and see what happens. So, plug it into my isolation transformer. And absolutely nothing. Okay, so we have a power supply fault to work on. Let's have a quick look at some of the other bits and pieces. Remote control. Again, not a model I've seen before, but looks pretty similar to some other Sony remotes. And a quick look around the back since we're playing with this machine. A small fan. So, line in and out. What's nice is it's got two inputs to select between, with S-Video in or composite video, why would you use that, in and out. And then Control S and LANC. Oh right, both Control S and LANC. An external timer switch, which is in off or playback with auto repeat and record. So I guess what happens then, if you just power it up with an external timer, it will do whichever of those you tell it to do. Right, let's get the lid off. It's a long time since I worked on my DHR1000. I didn't have much to do with that, actually. It more or less worked. I think the deck needed a bit of lubrication when I first got that one. And that's before I started YouTubing. So we didn't capture that. How long have I been YouTubing now? Oh, must be 6 years or more now. Okay, looks... maybe that's been disturbed, I don't know. There's our power supply. So I guess before we get too involved, we'll check for fuses and then we'll see if there's any outputs from this. I don't have the service manual to hand just yet, but I'm sure that won't be too hard to find. Okay, here's our fuse check. That's okay. So that eliminates probably the bridge rectifier prior to the chopper supply. Okay, I'm just going to power it up again and see if we get any voltages at all on anything. And if not, then we've got a completely dead power supply. Right, no voltages at all that I can see. I'm just going to check then that we have a live connection from here through to these terminals. That eliminates a socket and fuse in this plug. Okay, live we do. And neutral we do. Is there a master on off switch? Don't believe so. And looking at that live connection, does that then go to the fuse and out of the fuse? And then there's components in here. Okay, we need to get the power supply out, don't we? I'm assuming I can't gain access to the power supply from underneath. It's got a slide out tray, a bit like the EVS-9000. It's got a slide out tray here, which means the bottom is quite busy. It probably splits in half, but I'm assuming the power supply has to come at the top here for any work. I'll take this side panel off, though I suspect it's not going to help a great deal. Okay, I think I've got the power supply freed up, so I can now unplug it. Had a bit of a job unplugging these cables here. Had a bit of trouble unplugging these cables here. One of them I've left plugged in and unplugged the other end, which goes down to the deck. Okay, so maybe now I can slide it out of position. It's not going to be the easiest thing to work on, because I just can't get to anything when it's powered up. And be a little bit careful, because it's entirely possible there's a lot of voltage on C109 there. Let's have a quick look, because if that's on the output of the rectifier and then the rest of the power supply is not drawing any current, and if there's not a bleed resistor, then it could be sitting there with a high voltage. Let's have a look. And indeed, it's sitting there with some 300 volts. So treat that with a bit of respect. Some people just short it out with a screwdriver, and I'm not going to do that. I will discharge that with a resistor, because I'm a coward. Okay, let's discharge that slowly. Still got a little spark. Okay, we're down to 3 volts. Notice how it's charging itself up again. That's what capacitors can do. You know, they are, after all, just chemical. So look, it's going up 4 volts. You see, that's quite good, isn't it? The way capacitors can magically recharge themselves. Right, so why is the power supply totally dead? We need to be looking at somewhere in the chopper circuit, which is presumably all in this can. You have these parts FB101. There's a set of 4 FBs. Are they inductors or fuses? I don't know. Let's have a look. I really should get the service manual in a moment. Okay, they're all intact. So we really need to be going onto this module in the can. A little unhelpfully, that's all soldered on. So I'm going to have to desolder all those points in order to take the can off, I think. And whether that takes the can or the entire board, we will find out. Right, I could either use a desolder pump or wick. I think, given the shape of these, I'll use the wick. There's quite a lot of metal behind here, so it'll need some heat, I think. Okay, the wick didn't really touch it. I'm just not getting enough heat in there. So I'm going to try the desolder pump and soldering iron. So I seem to have this sussed now. What I'm doing is applying heat from one side with the soldering iron, and then also with the desolder pump. And then when it's all flowing, I pull all the solder off one side with the desolder pump, and the tiny bit is remaining on the other side with a bit of braid. So that's working. Okay, I think I've done all of the soldered points. Now we don't know whether I also need to desolder the input connectors or whether the can will come off on its own. So I need to be a little bit careful. Okay, I think the PCB is mounted into the can, so I'm going to have to desolder all of these as well. This makes any kind of repair in circuit totally impossible. We're just going to have to do DC checks and hope we can find the fault. Okay, I've got this off. I've also been trying to look up the service manual for the DSR-30 and come up with a complete blank. Doesn't seem to be out there. But I looked at the service manual for the DHR1000, which is the sort of prosumer version, the DV version, and it seems to have broadly the same power supply, if not exactly the same power supply. DC goes in here, and there's a chopper circuit in there, and various voltages come out there. So at least we've got that to work with. But I still don't quite know how to get this apart. Do we just slide the bottom off? Judging by the state of some of these components, I think we're definitely in the right area. Let's have a closer look. I have the service manual for the wrong machine, and it shows R115 and R101 in parallel on the input circuit. But this actual machine, which is obviously a different model or maybe just a different age, has the positions for both of those resistors, but only R115 is installed. And it's marked as a safety component, so we need to be suitably careful. But let's have a look at what we see across that resistor. There's a lot of dirt here, so it's sometimes, it's hard to see the difference between dirt and maybe a burn up. But I think this is dirt. Open circuit. So the fusible resistor's gone open circuit, and almost certainly for good reason. If we have a look, so this is the power as it comes in on this connector, and it immediately goes through those resistors. If the resistor was not there, would we see a short circuit between this point on the other side of the resistor and the other input connector? Well, some 4 ohms, yes. So something's gone short circuit there, and obviously taken out the fusible resistor. And what could go so badly short circuit that it takes out the fusible resistor? That's going to be the chopper transistor, isn't it? One of these transistors has gone short, I think. It's going to be the one that's on the heatsink, isn't it? So 2SK2605, I think. Though that's not what's on the diagram, but as we say, it is a different machine. But let's have a look at the transistor. And we're getting 0.5 ohm. So I think the transistor there has gone short. Not quite sure which terminals yet, but what is it? Source and drain, I think. Source and drain, a short circuit. But sometimes transistors of that type can fail for a reason. So just changing the resistor, which is going to be hard to source, and the transistor, which might also be hard to source, may not fix it. We've also got a lot of gunge to clean up. I'm almost tempted to throw it in the ultrasonic tank. I wonder if that might be an idea. Yeah, I might pop that in the ultrasonic tank, but we need to think about what other components may have caused failure of that transistor. Now, I'm not an expert on this kind of power supply. On the DV deck, the transistor is a 2SK2545, and on this one it's a 2SK2605. So I'm going to have to order those in. Where I may have been a bit lucky, of course, is the fusible resistor, which has a hole in the side, That's 0.47 ohm quarter watt. And by about a bit of incredible good luck, I have some RS Components 0.47 quarter watt fusible resistors here. So at least I can change that, and I've got enough spares that if I have any more blow-ups, that won't be a problem. Even though it looks more like a half watt compared to the original, which is much smaller, it says it is a quarter. So I can fit that and then have to wait for the transistors to show up. Is there something I should be looking at that could have blown up the transistor? I don't know. I will check the NPN transistors, make sure they're okay, but I don't think there's an awful lot more I could do. I don't know. I'll check some of the resistors around there as well, but I'm not seeing anything that would obviously cause a blow up. There's a capacitor as well. I'll check that one. So I'll check some of the components around there and make sure they're okay. And then we'll see if a new transistor and fusible resistor gets us running. The DHR1000 DV deck has two of these quarter watt 0.47 ohm resistors in parallel, and indeed this board has places for two, but only one of them was installed, so I'll fit just one as per the original. Okay, I've pretty much been through this board. Almost every component on the primary side I've checked. It did mean isolating one of the transistors because it's bypassed with some low value resistors. There are differences between this and the DHR1000, especially these resistors here. On the DHR1000 there's three 100k resistors in parallel, and here there's three 22k resistors in series. But you know, it's clearly broadly the same design. Oh, by the way, I hadn't mentioned, I did put this in the ultrasonic tank, but I was a little bit nervous about getting the transformer wet, so I sat it just up to about that depth and not for too long, so I didn't get water into the transformer, and just cleaned the primary. It was quite contaminated, so maybe something was tracking in there, but you can also see that the board has got, you know, a little bit hot over the years. It's a little bit cooked. Right, we're going to have to get hold of some of these transistors and then see where we are after that. Okay, we'll have to put this to one side until that transistor arrives. Well, that kind of leaves me with nothing much to do this week for the rest of my YouTube video. What am I going to do?
Special delivery.
Ooh, wonder what's in this. Let's have a look in here. So what do we have in here? A power supply of some sort. Is this another power supply of some sort? Not many clues yet, apart from the fact I recognise that as a Sony. And two somethings. Right, so a few weeks ago I got a Sony Digital 8 camcorder and I repaired it, and it looks like we have another one. Good. And is this one of the models that also plays back analog tapes? I'll have to look it up. 238. I think that one does play back analog, which makes it much more useful than the ones that are pure digital 8. Okay, so that's a good start. What's in this one? Ooh, not sure what all that is on the top. It's a somewhat newer one. This is HDR HC9 HDV1080i. This will be. Oh, well, they're quite useful if that runs. We could use that for playing HDV tapes. I do actually have other devices for playing HDV tapes, including and it looks like this is a really good one because it looks like it plays large tapes, but it only plays the small tapes. So presumably that would be able to do much the same job as this. Well, which one shall I try first? I've found a tape, so let's try this one first. There is no battery, but I think I have some batteries for these. It's a bit grubby, needs a really good clean. Alright, let's find the power supply. So I think it's this power supply. Oh yeah, there you are, it's marked up. Now, from what I remember, these are prone to deck failure of one sort or another. I'm not liking this. This is going to come off. It's some sort of device on a hot shoe. Let's get that out of the way. Just an extender of some sort. I don't know what that's for, but let's remove that. It's a cleaner look without it. There's some damage here. Looks like it's got glue on it or it's been melted. Power supply connectors at the back here. This one's got HDMI as well for connecting straight to your TV. Okay, let's switch that on and see if we get anything. Well, that's a promising thing. Reinsert the cassette. Why is it saying that? There isn't a cassette. Now, one of the problems I think these can suffer from is the mode switch can fail, and you can get it apart and replace or clean the mode switch, but it's not that easy to do. Okay, let's try it with a tape and see what happens. It's saying the tape is locked, but I want it to be locked. I want it in playback mode. So I think that switch is a bit jittery. So the only mode it'll go into is... Oh, it's gone play edit. That's what we want. Right, that's better. Now can we rewind the tape? It's promising. Hit play. And it's playing 1080i. Is it playing it repeatably and reliably without big dropouts? Because HDV is terrible for big dropouts. It does appear to be working. And one of the things is, if it's not working properly, the time counter will stop every so often. And the tape, it is going, all the frames are counting properly on that. So this does look like it's a fully working camcorder. I mean, I haven't tried it in record mode, and I don't really care about that. It's mainly for playback. Should we do a short recording on it? It just went off. Not sure what's going on. Is it struggling to keep power? Is there a problem? Connection problem? Or was that a nothing? Right, switch the tab over. Okay, let's just record something. It's recording. And we can record you recording me. Go back into... Which mode is it we want to get back into tape play? Camera tape. This switch isn't working very well, is it? Camera memory, play edit. That's one we wanted. That might need a little squirt of switch cleaner if I can get some in there. It's not a showstopper though. Ah, it dropped then, didn't it? Did you see that? Let's watch that again. So it's playing cleanly, the counter's running. When I went off that shot, it froze for a moment. Oh, it was okay that time. Maybe it just needs a head cleaning, you know. It could be as simple as running a head cleaner tape through this. Let's see what happens when I take it off that shot. Yep, it's fine. I think it may just need a head clean. It's working. Good. Let's clean this up. It's got quite a lot of marks in it. I'll be a little careful, but I use some isopropyl alcohol on that. I think a lot of these marks have come off this. These tend to disintegrate a lot. It's not coming up that clean, is it? I think there's a risk of doing more harm than good if we scrub this too hard. Okay, well it's clean enough that I don't mind touching it now. So that will be used on occasions when I have to run HDV tapes. We have discussed already that there are two kind of standards for HDV. Well, two primary ones. There's the Sony and Canon take on HDV, which was 1080i primarily, and JVC's, which was 720p. I've got a camera for that up there. That one. And I've featured that before. If I take a recording from that camera, it may play on the display on this, but you won't get any output from the Firewire port because it's only partly supported by Sony equipment. The Sony Canon version is much more popular, to the point that, you know, I've said, possibly incorrectly, that that's the standard and that JVC went off on a different direction. Well, they were both part of the HDV specification at the start, but Sony thought that the higher resolution was more important than progressive video, and JVC thought progressive video was more important than the higher resolution. But with the bandwidth on the tape, you could only do one or the other at the time. Sony did come up with 1080p later, and I'm not quite sure how they did it, and I think they might have fudged it. So this will play the vast majority of small size HDV tapes that I will see. Good, that is a nice piece of equipment. I'll make use of that. Let's have a play with the Digital 8. Right, so we have a DSR-30P, which is one of the bottom loading decks. What's the screen like on this model? Looks fine. Okay, let's power it up. Switch that to player. Did it just switch off? It all sounded so promising. Why did it switch off? The other one did that too. Switched off for a moment. Oh, there's a tape in this, I think. And it's a Digital 8 recording. And that's playing fine. But the most important thing for me is its ability to play analog tapes. So let's try a video 8 tape. It's actually high 8, this one. Yes, it says digital to analog switchover mode. This, I think, is an NTSC recording, so it's switched over to NTSC. Usually the volume control there on most models, but not on this one. Okay, the volume controls are on the panel here, somewhat annoyingly. Okay, so that's working just fine. So after, you remember all that work I put in last week or week before to trying to get a Digital 8 to work? This one is working, but it did just glitch out again. Why is it doing that? I expect if it was just left alone it'll work. It's because I'm handling it, and there's a poor contact here. It could be the cable itself. I'll squirt the socket and this, and if it's still doing it, then I'll just use another power supply with it. Bit of deoxit in there. And on this. Right, let's wiggle it now. Yeah, I think there's a bad connection somewhere. It could be the socket, which would be annoying. I think it'd be okay if it's left alone. You know, if that's just sat there doing video capture, it isn't going to matter that if you pull on the cable that something bad happens. So I think we're good to run with that one. I could, if I had to, take the unit apart and get to the power socket on the back here. I've done that before. I got right down to a board on one of these once before when I had a component failure on there. So it is something that could be done if necessary, but I don't think it is necessary for the way it's working. Just testing the Digital 8 camcorder. So I've just put it in here with the original tape it had in it, and a different power cable. And you notice this one is not going on and off now, so it was the cable, not the socket. And that's connected via Firewire link to this computer, which can control it. So if I hit rewind on there, it will rewind the machine. Start capture, and that's capturing video with no frame drops. I have a shortcut to a little script I've created which sets the priority of the video capture software above normal. And here is effectively what that little script does. It sets this priority. So we're going to go to the that one, go to details, and the priority's been set to high. That just reduces the chances of the computer finding something else unimportant to do, like a virus check or something, in the middle of doing your video capture, resulting in dropped frames. These two cameras can both output digital video via the Firewire ports, in this case from analog tapes as well. But what about those times where you need to digitize something such as VHS or Beta, where you don't have any kind of Firewire connection? What you really need.
Delivery.
Oh, I say, thank you. I wonder what's in this. Right, let's see what we have in here. Firewire cables. Aha! Canopus AD-VC55. My favourite analog to digital converter box. So these output digital via Firewire, and it comes with some cables. That's rather decent cable. And sometimes these come with a power cable. Sometimes they've got a socket for power. But when you're running it on the larger Firewire connectors, the power comes through the Firewire lead, and you don't normally need a mains adapter. That lights up green when it's ready to capture, red if there's some sort of reason it can't. And the only switch here you need to remember is that one's for PAL and that one's for NTSC. And you can't capture pseudo PAL or NTSC 4.43. It has to be real NTSC or PAL. Somewhat worryingly though, there's a screw missing and this cabinet's loose. Does that mean somebody's been fiddling in here? That's a little bit worrying, isn't it? Oh well, if we're lucky, it's just that the screw fell out. Okay, let's test this. I'll put some colour bars in from a digital time-based corrector and we'll check that it's recognised by the computer and that it captures video. Here's one of my pre-existing Canopus units. So this one's got S-video in and audio in and a Firewire connector here, and it's presently connected to this digital time-based corrector that's outputting colour bars. So I'll connect the Firewire cable. Starts off red there. Is detected by this PC. Start capture. Okay, connect the Firewire port up. Sounds promising. Gone green. And we're capturing from that. So despite the loose screws, all seems to be well. I will have to check that the audio captures properly as well. Okay, there's another screw that's loose here. Let's see if we can do that up. Yep, that's fine. So we've got one missing. Somewhere I've got to scrap one of these. So when I find it, I'll take that screw out and fit it into there. There are those who argue, and people keep going on about this, how the DV codec is not a good one, is not efficient for video capture. And that other ones are better and that other devices are better, and you can get little USB things that plug in that give you good results. Well, I personally have found that these do a great job. The DV codec, especially for PAL, that generates 13 gigabytes per hour video files, gives pretty damn good results, and there's much more to worry about than the capture codec. The main things driving the quality is playing it on a good player and having a digital time-based corrector in there. Whether DV is the most efficient codec, well, yeah, maybe you can get ones that are more efficient today. I'm sure you can. But for standard definition video, I find these just give great results. And a great thing about them also is I find that the data streams never suffer from lip sync errors. The picture and sound always stay perfectly lined up on these. So I recommend them. There's also the AD-VC110, which goes both ways. So you can go from Firewire to analog outputs. Not something I particularly need, and if I did need that, I could use a DVCAM deck like a DSR-11 that can do the same function. So there's no point paying the extra for the AD-VC110. So this is only half of it, hence the model number, you see. Kind of a joke, I think. Right, okay, happy with that. Oh yes, I knew I had another one of these. This says video input can be intermittent, and it's not just a bad socket thing, because S-video and composite are both intermittent. There's something wrong with this, and I've taken it apart and looked for dry joints, and nah, can't work it out. So it's an electronic fault. And you don't get schematics or anything for these. And also, they're not all the same, I've found. Different ages of these have different circuits. So I'm raiding a screw from that one and put it into our latest acquisition. Okay, well, it's been a fairly short video today. We're waiting on parts for the DVCAM, but we've had a couple of camcorders to play with as well. And of course, you'll remember from last week that we had the Grundig, well, it wasn't Grundig, it was Siemens 429 stereo, which is a Grundig 2080A V2000 stereo with extra long play. They called it XP, so it's 2x8 hour recording time. And that machine is acting strangely. I kind of convinced myself that it's got a power and reset problem, but I've been warned that there are, well, the ICs in there, there's some big ICs, I'm not sure which one exactly yet, but at least one of them can forget its EEPROM. It can lose its EEPROM code, so it loses its firmware and then it won't work. And there is a way of reprogramming that. If you know more detail on exactly how to set about doing that and where we would get that code from, please let me know, because that might be something we have to be able to do in order to repair that machine. You know, there's so many things that can nobble that video recorder, but if we can't get the processors to work, then we're onto a loser. There's two that I'm aware of. There's one on the back panel, which is the Ablaufsteuerung, I think you're supposed to say it, which is like the flow control or syscon. And there will be something else on the clock, which I haven't looked at much yet, but the clock is just intermittently either, well, it's either blank or occasionally comes up with all segments lit or just one random segment lit. So it doesn't look like that's working properly, even though we do know that all the power supply is good. Right, I'll do plenty more content on audio and video technology in the near future. Bye for now. I featured this before. It's a JVC Super VHS machine with a built-in digital time-based corrector. So these are really very useful machines and highly sought after. But unfortunately, some of these models include a feature called the dynamic drum assembly, which allows it to move the video head position, the drum position, during picture search and freeze frame to give you better performance in those modes. But really, that's not that important. And the trouble is that the gears in that dynamic drum system keep failing. It's not like you can just disconnect it, because it's looking for signals back from the head position sensor. I mean, I suppose you could come up with some sort of really complicated system that bypassed it, but I really couldn't figure.
Priority post.
Oh, okay. We'll look at this later.